We're back.
What's up, everybody?
I think we need to work on our radio voices, by the way. It's Brad and Shane back on the IP Squared podcast. Glad
And
to be
today we are going to talk about accountability.
That's right, Brad. We're going to talk. All right. And
Cue the music.
Yeah.
All right, guys.
Yeah, so we are going to talk about accountability today, though.
We are. So we took a little hiatus. So we've been kind of offline for, I guess, about a week now.
Yep.
So we're back. We're going to get back into a normal schedule so you guys can know when we're publishing podcast instead of this random here and there. So
That's right.
I think we're going to record these on Monday, Wednesday, and Friday.
Yep.
So you guys can start looking forward to new podcasts published on those days. So, hey, Shane, before we get started here on accountability, how is your challenge going from last podcast episode?
It's good. It's hard, though. Yeah, so, when the challenge... I've tried to do is for 30 days. I wake up. Well, so I've been waking up earlier, but I have an hour to myself where I can kind of do whatever I want for the day. So the first part is kind of setting up my mindset, just kind of getting excited for the day, and the second half is really cultivating my use of the subconscious mind and trying to understand how best I can make associations between unrelated things and boost my creativity and my ability to see opportunity in all situations. So I try to do that for a half hour each morning, and it's one of the hardest things I've ever done, especially when you're tired and there's other things going on in your life, and it can be very difficult to be creative when you just kind of, I don't know, it just doesn't feel like ideas are coming to you. But it's been good. It's been a struggle, but I've been keeping with it. So what about you?
That's good. So why don't you recount what the challenge is for those that are just tuning in or did not hear the last episode?
Sure. So the idea of this 30-day challenge is to essentially form a good habit. I mean, that's really what it comes down to, right? So and it's not just... I guess it could really be any good habit, but the idea is to form a habit, a new way of thinking that ultimately helps you reach the goals that you set for yourself, right? So it's something that works for you and not against you, right? So that's a pretty broad, it's a broad definition, and a lot of different, ideas and habits could work into that effectively. But so with mine, for example, I see that being able to use your creative imagination, to come up with better ideas for doing things is an invaluable skill, and it just doesn't happen overnight. It's something that needs to be cultivated. So that's why I came up with the challenge I did, just taking 30 minutes a day and being very intentional and focused about how can I strengthen my creative imagination and kind of tap into associations between things and ideas that live in my subconscious mind that I otherwise would not have been able to harvest, if you will.
Gotcha. Okay. So thanks for recounting that. So you had asked how I'm doing on mine. So I've mentioned in past episodes that, I work out in the mornings. But that's not something that I do all the time. Sometimes I get into a little rut and I procrastinate a little bit, and it's like, hey, look, I left work late yesterday. I was up really late last night. Mm-hmm. So I'm just going to skip this morning. So what I've been doing since we started this challenge is challenging myself to get up, get out, and get to the gym.
Yep.
And be on the elliptical at a certain time. And one of the things that I did that's helping me with this is I decided that I have to put everything on my calendar. So even if it's driving to work, how long does it take me to drive to work? 45 minutes. Put that on my calendar. How long does it take to work out? put that on my calendar. So I've started putting things on my calendar.
And creating a schedule for yourself.
Exactly. So we talked about habits in a past episode. So this is, helping me, using technology, helping me to get into those habits. I will say that since I started this, every single morning I've gotten up, I've gone to the gym, and I've worked out for 30 minutes. And the reason why I like doing that is because it's just a time of clarity for me. I listen to different podcasts. I listen to a lot of Dave Ramsey, EntreLeaderships. I listen to Audible books. And so while I'm listening to those things, I'm taking notes. I'm thinking of tasks that I have to work out during the day.
Sure.
Because what I do is I run on the elliptical, and it's the most boring thing, Shane, that a human being could ever do. It absolutely sucks.
Yeah, I would second that. That's why I can't do it.
But what I will say is that it's worth it 150%. So
Okay.
these are the things that I do to kind of manage that time. It's 60 minutes of complete boredom, even though there's a television screen and I can plug my headphones into it and I can watch whatever. I'm not interested in all that trash. So I'm interested in filling my head with knowledge, basically emptying out the person to my mind. So that's what I'm doing. I'm learning. I'm creating tasks for the day. I'm telling myself how my day is going to go. I'm convincing myself of the goals that I need to achieve. And what I will tell you, Shane, is the last week and a half since we started this challenge, my days fly by. And
Interesting.
It's they're so much better because I'm thinking of, or I'm telling myself exactly how these days are going to go. So that 60 minutes on the elliptical, and forcing myself to get into that habit and do that every single morning. It's not this roller coaster ride that I was on before, where one day I had a good day because I was doing this, and the next day I was tired. I didn't want to get up. I got here at work at a decent time. But the day didn't go so well because I didn't plan for it. I didn't think of it. I didn't put down all my tasks. So now I'm struggling throughout the day. So, not that it wasn't, a positive day or the day actually, went bad or anything. It just didn't go as good as it could have. So, I'm learning that through this challenge of telling myself to get in this habit and do this every single morning, that my days are so much better.
Sure.
Since we started it, so.
Well, one of the things I heard you say, though, I think is interesting, it's good to realize, is that, when you're doing, like, some, it's like the elliptical, let's say. It's not exactly like a riveting, mentally stimulating task. And a lot of times it's pretty arduous, right? Because you're physically exerting yourself. When we exercise, sometimes it's hard to see, like, the benefits that it's providing for us in the moment. We don't understand, like, hey, in the long term, it's going to be great for us, but, like, we just have a hard time with the present moment. So it's I think what's good is that you're seeing those times when you're on the elliptical, when you're stuck in traffic, to see those is opportunities that you can grow in knowledge. You can start planning more. You just have more of an idea of what your day holds, and so you're multitasking, but you're still able to focus at the same time. So I think it sounds like it'd be really, really useful and beneficial.
Yeah, it's great. So that's what Shane and I have been doing in the challenge. We'd love to hear from all of you that are out there listening. So please go to the website, put your comments on the site. YouTube, if you're watching or listening on YouTube, please add comments. Or if you want to just shoot us an email and kind of let us know kind of how you guys are working through your challenge. Again, that email is podcast@intentionallypositiveproject.com. So give us a shout and let us know, and we'll discuss it and talk about it here on the podcast. So, Shane, getting to the topic, accountability, all this plays in together.
Accountability, yeah.
So let's talk accountability.
Well, first of all, what is accountability, right? It's having someone or something to answer to.
That's right.
For goals that we set or intentions that we basically make known, right?
Well, I think that's how you and I have been applying it. And I think that's what we want to talk about today, because I think there's all different aspects of accountability.
Sure.
But I think that's how we've been applying accountability in our life, is having an accountability partner, right? So we talk a lot about, Napoleon Hill and Think Get Rich. And this is what one of the things that he talks about. He talks about having an accountability partner.
Yep.
And having that accountability to somebody and a mentor and touching base. So that's kind of what Shane and I have been doing. That's kind of what we've been doing with each other is saying, hey, what are we holding each other accountable for, and then catching up each day and asking each other where we are.
Absolutely. Another way you can look at this is okay. I think there's, before we dive too deep into it, I think when it comes
back it up, Shane. Back it up.
That was my reverse noise. just so you guys know.
Wait, do that again.
So I think when it comes to accountability, there's like a few entities involved, right? There's accountability to other people, which is kind of like what you were touching on, like having like a partner, a group of people that you answer to. I think there's also accountability to yourself, which is a lot harder to cultivate, right? Because a lot of times
that's the struggle, right?
We give ourselves all kinds of like passes on things. Oh, well, I'm just so tired. Like I don't want to get out. Like
it's kind of what we talked about in the beginning of the podcast. Yeah.
Exactly. So there's accountability to yourself, and then for most people, I think there's also an accountability to a higher power, right? So there's an accountability to God. Like when you state your intentions on things and you make promises, there's there's the expectation that you're going to follow through. So I think today what we're going to especially talk about is accountability in terms of another person, because sometimes that's the easiest place to start, because you can hear that person's voice. You know that they've heard your voice, like when you've stated your intentions, and like that person looks you in the eyes whenever you're giving an explanation for why you're at where you're at. So I think that's why it can be especially effective. And then as you learn how to follow through with your accountability towards other people, it gets easier to start being more accountable to yourself, to your creator, and life just kind of gets better as a result. So for right now, I think let's talk about having an accountability partner and what that looks like and how that works. You want to kick us off?
Yeah, sure. So accountability partner. Like I talked about a few minutes ago, this is something that you and I have been doing, right? So, it's defining those things that you want to be accountable for. There are a lot of things that Shane and I are doing together, and it's okay, we're going to put these goals on a schedule, and we're going to identify what these goals that we're driving towards on this schedule look like. What are they? Kind of going back to the DMP, defining those things, and having check-ins. Like we kid around and we talk about meeting at Starbucks, drinking tall coffees, drinking venti coffees.
They're grande now, by the way.
You've stepped up.
I've stepped up. You've elevated my expectations of what I should get out of life.
That's good. That's good. Progress, Shane. Progress. Yes. But anyway, when we talk about all those things, that's essentially what we're doing. Like we're holding each other accountable, of saying, hey, look, this is when we're going to be, at this location. This is what we're going to talk about, while we're there. So when we talk about, getting together and having coffee, that's how this podcast started.
Yep.
Is basically saying, hey, what could we do to start learning different things about, some things that Shane and I are working on, around social media, around publishing. I don't want to go into too many details, we'll hold you guys in suspense, but we had to start somewhere. And we talked about this for a long time. And so as Shane and I were rereading, a lot of the books that we had, read in the past, we thought about, these things that we were learning in these books that we were reading. And one of those things was, accountability partners and holding each other accountable. And so that's what we did. That's how this podcast started, was this is what we're going to do. We're going to commit to this. We're going to put this on a schedule. We're going to put a date on this. We're going to put a time on this. And we're going to hold each other accountable for getting together and starting to record a podcast. We're going to do this together. And that's how this podcast started, was having that accountability partner. And we do a lot of this. And, well, that's what I have for accountability.
Sure.
Accountability partner. So
yeah, I think another aspect too. We'll talk about like how you find an accountability partner, because that's a huge part of it. You don't just kind of pick anyone. You don't necessarily even pick like your best friend to do it, right? We'll get into that. But when you find a partner that's like on the same level as like where you're trying to be, right? You find someone who themselves follow through. You want to create this sort of like dependency on one another, because sometimes, like you just don't feel like getting up in the morning. You don't feel like doing the tasks you've set for yourself. Even if you wanted to before, you just don't feel like doing it. And sometimes knowing that another person is depending on the work that you do in order for them to move forward, sometimes that's the motivation you need in order to keep pushing forward, right? You need to know that, hey, if I don't do this, it's going to let this person down, or it's going to hold them up. So that's another huge benefit about having an accountability partner. Another way that Napoleon Hill describes it in Think and Grow Rich, and a lot of his other like lectures, is the whole concept of a mastermind principle. Mm-hmm. Right? The mastermind ultimately is a group of 2 or more individuals who share the same goal and who basically pool their resources together to help achieve that. So whenever you're looking for an accountability partner, you want to find someone who, like, A, you respect, B, who is as passionate as you are about personal development, and achievement. Someone with good moral like good moral stature. I guess they're going to follow through and not screw you over, right? That's a big thing. And someone that you can grow with, right? Like when it comes to Brad too, I was just thinking about this as you were talking, just like how we even like kind of got going with this. We were never like even like great friends, I would say, even before we started this podcast. But we'd go out to lunch with groups, and then we kind of like learned, just through like the random conversations we have, just kind of the values each other has, and just kind of the sense of personality and character. And then I think like one time we just like happened to be talking about like success and all that kind of stuff, and realized that we were kind of on the same page. And then from then on, like, it wasn't like a real formal, like, okay, we're like in this mastermind alliance now, and we're going to meet here every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday.
Well, to break it down into like very simplistic terms that we can relate to like day-to-day, kind of activity, since we are talking about like mastermind groups, and we're talking about inspiration and all this kind of stuff, it doesn't always have to be around like this moral high ground or whatever.
Sure,
like,
yeah.
I mentioned that I read tons of books. I just finished the book The Immigrant's Edge, and Shane, if you haven't read that book, you should definitely pick that up and read it. For those of you guys out there listening, I highly recommend this book, because all the things that we've talked about in the past, all the authors that we've talked about in the past, this guy takes everything we've been saying and everything that they've been saying, and he kind of writes a modern day book about all of the things that all these authors that we've been talking about have talked about in the past, and he kind of brings it forward in kind of a modern day kind of light. His name is Brian Blatini, I think is his name.
Buffini.
Buffini, yeah.
Is that it?
Buffini, yeah. Brian Buffini, yeah. So he has a podcast as well. But anyway, one of the things that he talks about in his book, we talk about accountability partners, is just think about it in simple terms, right? So you want to work out, you want to get fit, you want to lose some weight. What's the best way to do that?
Sure.
Is to find yourself a partner that's also looking to get fit, that's looking to lose some weight as well. And that's the best way to hold each other accountable and make sure that your goal is set because you have a like-minded goal, right? And when you feel like you don't want to work out on certain days, guess what? Your fitness partner is going to show up to your door, knock on it, and say, it's time to go, and encourage you to go and work out for that day.
Yep.
And the same thing with your partner. Your partner's going to have those days where they're just not going to want to work out.
Yeah.
And you're going to go and you're going to knock on the door. You're going to drag them out of bed and you're going to drag them to the gym and you're going to work out. So he breaks a lot of the stuff that we're talking about down in very simple kind of context like that.
And I can relate too, like even like to the podcast. Sometimes it's just like, I mean, you feel like quote unquote you have other things to do, or you're tired, or maybe you're not as excited or like energized to talk about being positive, but the other person's, hey, we're doing the podcast, or you yourself are the one like, hey, let's go, let's get it recorded.
And Shane and I rev each other up. Sometimes it takes us a couple days to do that. You should see some of the texts. You guys should see some of the texts that we send back and forth to each other. And we finally just encourage each other to get in here to record the podcast. And that's what it's about. So to Shane's point, it's about, finding like-minded individuals, that have like-minded goals. And, it doesn't always have to be the same person because, Shane, he's a great-looking,
That's
really
right.
fit guy. He
That's
doesn't need
right.
to work out. So, I would need another partner, to work out, because this guy doesn't need to work out. He's fit and buff and all that kind of
It's
stuff.
just being able to bench press, that much weight is
It's like 600 pounds you can bench press? Or
Oh no, it's not more than 575.
Oh,
Yeah,
okay.
I've never been able to break that, but I mean,
Yeah, so yeah, to the point that we're trying to make is that, you're going to find different individuals that, are at different walks in their life, that, need to get certain things out of you in life. And, you should seek out and, find those individuals that, can help you through this, walk of life, accomplish these different things, whether it's like we're doing, recording a podcast, or, we've got, a financial goal in mind, or we've got a fitness goal in mind, or we've got a business venture goal in mind, whatever it may be. It's much easier when you put two minds together. I mean, that's what Napoleon Hill says, or is it Earl Nightingale? I forget which one, but he basically says putting two individuals together, it's not 1 + 1, it's 2. It's 1 + 1 is 11.
yeah, 1
right?
+ 1 is 11.
Right. So very, very interesting.
And
So-
Andrew Carnegie, he was talking about in that book, like his mastermind group was like 52 people.
Mm-hmm.
Like they all shared the same goal. I mean, they like revolutionized like the United States and just like the steel industry in general and just how business works.
They built America according to.
Sure. Yeah, it's amazing what putting multiple minds together with the same goal is capable of.
Right.
And so, and I was going to say, another thing that I think is beneficial to, being accountable to another person or to a group of people is it's a venue in which you can take these desires that you have, these goals, these things that you want to achieve, and it allows you to voice them and make them real. A lot of times, like we have like a really strong desire, even maybe like a definite major purpose, but we only keep it to ourselves. Like a lot of times we won't even write it down, right? Because whenever you speak things out loud, whenever you write things down and share that with another human being or multiple human beings, well, now it's a kind of reality. Now you're left with the you're left with the scenario that says, hey, if I don't accomplish this now, I will be considered a failure to these people. That's an unbelievable motivator for getting it done.
Really interesting you talk about that because I just finished the Immigrant's Edge this morning, and that's one of the things that he talks about as one of the final chapters. Is writing your own journal. I know this is something a little bit different than what you're talking about, but that's something that he stresses, is that writing a journal and remembering that a journal is private and not censoring yourself because you are facing what you feel in your mind. You're putting it down on paper. You're realizing that you're getting it out. You're putting it in front of you. You're creating a reality around this. Whereas a lot of times we may hold things in, we may censor ourselves, and we don't ever face what the situation is.
Yep.
right? So yeah, to your point, as far as like, writing things down with your accountability partner, you put that down on paper and you know exactly what you're holding each other accountable for.
Sure. And Brad, you were saying before too, like even like when it comes to like the moral aspect of that, or like the moral character. And the reason I bring that up in the first place is because these dreams that we have for ourselves and these goals are very personal, and they're it's something very sacred to us because it's something that we own, right? It's something that we possess. So you want to just make sure. You don't want to share it with the whole world. You don't just like go and from the rooftops and like, here is my life's goal, go. That's just not the way it works, because there's a lot of people out there who just, I don't know, it just seems like they exist to be obstacles. You know what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. So you can avoid a lot of that by keeping it to yourself, but finding a human being or a group of human beings that you trust and that are that you respect, that you feel comfortable sharing your life's goals with. So that's another huge benefit to having an accountability partner or partners, and what you should be looking for in someone that you work with.
Very good point. Very good point. So now let's move into accountability partners, and basically getting practice is kind of what we talked about in the beginning, of starting with an accountability partner and then being able to use that practice and that knowledge to hold yourself accountable. Let's talk about how it becomes much easier for you to hold yourself accountable.
Sure. Well, I think ultimately it comes down to, for me, the way I understand it is, being accountable to yourself is essentially you're exercising your will, right? You say you're going to do something, mm-hmm. and you follow through. This is very difficult a lot of times, like when you're just starting out, right? But there's, it says in Scripture, I'm paraphrasing, of course, but like he who is responsible in little matters and is trustworthy in little matters is also capable of being trustworthy in big matters, mm-hmm. And carrying those out. So for me, something that's been incredibly effective at teaching me to kind of master my own will, and when I say I'm going to do something, continue to follow through, is just I find little things that I can do, and particularly sacrifice, right? So for example, like when I started work in my current job, one person, she would always have this giant bowl of candy, right? It was awesome. She would always pick the best things. She didn't really do it anymore, but that's good. But she'd have this giant bowl of candy. And so what I would say, like after lunch, I don't know, it just kind of became my routine that I would just grab 2 of those, like 2 pieces of chocolate or whatever, right? It just,
this is something who you're talking about. I'm glad they don't bring that candy in anymore.
Yeah, you know who it is, yeah. Right? Yeah, so she brings it in, and then I would grab 2 pieces after lunch. But then, like, what I started doing is to, like, learn how to get my will, basically, in submission, is I would say, you know what, I'm still going to go get the candy, I'm just going to grab 1 piece. I'm just going to do that, right? And then so it's just like became like I wanted 2 pieces, but no, I could just have 1, mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And then over time, I would say, you know what, today I'm not even going to get that chocolate.
Right.
And then I just would, go without it. And then the next day I would have another piece again, and then, the day after that, maybe I would not. So it was a slow, gradual thing. And eventually, when it got to the point where it's like, you know what, I don't need that chocolate anymore. I still wanted it, but like I was able to, do what I wanted to do. Ultimately, was be able to be free of that chocolate and not need it. Right.
Yeah.
So,
and that's interesting because that ties back into one of our previous podcasts, which is breaking habits. Right.
Yeah.
It's not necessarily that eating candy is a bad habit, but it's not necessarily in moderation. But the thing is, if you exactly. are trying to break any kind of habit, this is a great way to do that. It's interesting because earlier this morning you're talking about the candy bowl. Someone came over. I was talking to them about them drinking less soda. And I went through a whole thing of this, several years ago. I kind of went through this thing of kind of weaning myself off of sugar, and it was a huge struggle because you get into like week number 2 of not having sugar, and it's like you're just like, I need sugar, sugar.
It's a strong addiction, man.
It hurts. It
Yeah.
hurts. But if you push through and you commit to this and you hold yourself accountable, yes, it's going to be painful. And things like weaning yourself off of sugar. But in the third week, it's like just something snaps. And it's just like, you don't even want sugar anymore.
Yeah.
You don't even crave sugar anymore. You almost throw up thinking about
Yeah.
sugar. And you just feel so much better. At least that was my experience. And so anyway, I guess what I'm saying is that I was able to share that experience with somebody and say, hey, look, for me, this took 2 weeks. In the third week, I felt like a completely different person, that I had shed this thing that, had been dragging along for years. So, it's encouraging and inspirational to kind of share that with somebody and say, hey, hold yourself accountable to this. I went through this. This is what I did, and here's what you can expect. And, hopefully that person, will listen, and that person will apply that self, and, they'll learn accountability for themselves. So.
Yeah, and when you start like developing that willpower and that control over yourself, like in the small things, I mean, the momentum you build up is insane, and it goes really
Yes.
fast. And not only that, it helps you build confidence in yourself.
That's a big thing.
Yeah,
That's a huge thing.
It helps you build confidence in yourself because you start realizing that, hey, whenever I choose to do something, like give up candy or sugar or, accomplish this goal or whatever, you believe you can do it. And so your goals and the things that you start shooting for expand and get bigger. And the most important thing is the belief that it's possible is behind you. And so if you start in the little things, it's amazing how that translates to the big things.
That's turning a can't into a can.
Yep.
Or what we would say here on the podcast, that's spinning a negative into a positive.
There you
Well, Shane, I think we've talked out accountability. I am looking forward to my venti coffee. So you want to wrap this up?
Yeah, I'll be getting my grande. And actually, sorry, real quick, I think about it, maybe that's why I always went with my tall lattes, is because it was more like exercise of the will, So it's something I'm going to be pondering the rest of the day.
So which way do you go? So did you break a
Well,
bad
now
habit? Now you have a good habit. You have to now break a bad habit and go back.
But I have the confidence that I can overcome that. But yeah, grande sounds really good today, so that's what I'm gonna go with. But thank you guys for listening. We appreciate appreciate all the feedback that we're getting, and looking forward to the next one.
Absolutely, yeah, guys. And if you want to send anything to us, remember to jot your comments down on the website or in YouTube. And you can always email us and let us know your thoughts at podcast@intentionallypositiveproject.com.
Thanks,
It
guys.
is Brad and Shane signing off.
Signing off.